Several years ago, I was at a new church start pastors conference where most of the people did not know each other. And so as a way of getting acquainted and getting off to a good start on the conference, we were divided into small groups. And we were instructed to share with one another an experience that we had to which we could add the words, "And my God is like that." Well, several people were ahead of me in giving their experiences, and so I did what most people do, I think, and I listened with one ear while I was trying to determine what I was going to introduce. And I listened to a young man talk about being at the birth of his newborn son and the marvel of that birth, new life. And he said, "My God is like that." And I listened to a lady talk about seeing the sunrise and realizing that it was the beginning of a new day. And she said, "My God is like that." And I heard several others. One talked about a storm. And as it came closer to my time, I decided to go back to my childhood. And this is the story that I told. I spent my elementary school years in a remote area, South Alabama, Conecuh County. And when I say remote, I mean remote. It was about a 19-mile bus ride, as I remember, to get to school. There was no after-school activities, and there was nobody that lived within a mile of where I lived. My mother and I had gone down to help take care of my grandfather after his wife had died, and my dad was off at school completing a college degree. And the one thing that of course, I missed the companionship of other boys, other children, except at school. And one of the things that I wanted more than anything else was to be a Boy Scout. Well, I don't know if those of you who are watching this are aware of it or not, but the Boy Scouts at one time had what they call a lone Boy Scout, just for people like me. And my mother subscribed to Boys Life, joined whatever it took to be a lone Boy Scout. I still think that probably the motive behind the lone Boy Scout program was to sell Boys Life, but I'm not sure about that. But I read it avariciously, over and over again, and at one point she bought me a Boy Scout handbook. And I studied that. But of course, there was no troop. Then when I was in the 6th grade, we moved, rejoined my father, and we moved to a little cotton mill town on the banks of the Tallapoosa River. And I joined a Boy Scout troop. Troop 38. Scobilly was the scoutmaster. And one of the first things that we did, because we'd moved into summer, was to go to Boy Scout camp. I was thrilled. And the first day of camp, we were instructed, all the boys were instructed to get into their bathing trunks and go down to the swimming pool. And we were to line up in a line across the deep end of the pool. And what we were told to do was one by one we would jump in the water and swim across the pool. And if we knew different strokes, we could swim back and forth a couple of times and be classified as a swimmer. Otherwise, it would be a beginner. Well, I thought that was a great idea. And I was putting on my bathing trunks when I realized I didn't know how to swim. I had told people that I did, and I had paddled around in the creek close to where we lived with my granddaddy. But in creeks in Alabama, for the most part, are not all that terribly wide. and certainly not wide enough to use any strokes if I had anybody to tell me how to do it. And also, in the summertime, which is the only time you could be in the creek, of course, you don't dare put your head underwater because you have to keep watch out for the cottonmouth moccasins. So about all I had ever done was to wade in the water, maybe chest deep, and paddle around, and so I didn't know how to swim at all. And then I realized that the swimming pool, we were at the deep end, and the water would be over my head when and if I jumped in. It was a huge swimming pool. I mean, it was so wide you could hardly see the other side of it. At least that's the way it looked to me that day. I've been back there since then, and it's amazing to me how that swimming pool has shrunk. And it's awfully small today, but history does that to things. Well, I got in line like everybody else did, and one by one, the boys in front of me jumped in the water and made it. But there was one thing that kept coming in my mind that was a certainty, and that is if I jumped into that swimming pool, I was going to drown. And then my mother and daddy would be sorry. And then I got closer and closer. And I realized I had two options, only two, as far as I could tell. I would either jump in the water when my time came and drown, or I would cut out of the line, run back to the cabin, and live the rest of my life in shame and disgrace. Seemed like two clear alternatives. And while I'm working all that through in my mind, I'm getting closer. So far, nobody has drowned, but I knew it would be me. And then there's one boy in front of me. And I'm at the very moment of indecision, and he jumped in, and I'm standing on the edge. And at the very moment of indecision, Rick, the waterfront director, was an 18-year-old with a body that a 12-year-old boy can only dream of having. And Rick had platted himself a 16-foot bullwhip. And just at the moment of indecision, Rick cracked that whip and said, "Jump!" And I was in the water. And somehow, some way, I managed to thrash around and dog paddle and get to the other side of the swimming pool and was pulled out, and I was classified a beginner. I was ecstatic. I told that story to those people at the conference, and when I finished, I said, and my God is like that. Sometimes, at the moment of indecision, when I cannot decide whether to take a risk or to retreat, I hear Rick or God, that 16-foot bullwhip cracking, and God says, "Jump." I've jumped, so to speak, several times then, taken a few risks. My life has never been all that dramatic, but almost always, when I have heard that voice and taken the risk, I've been grateful.